Okay, so with this squash strata stuff, I want to say you really need to give it a shot. Really try it. Even if you don't think you'll like the squash and the zucchini, it's really good with all the cheeses and the garlic and everything that's mixed in it. Just give it a chance. Yummy. Okay, so to the specialty cheeses that are in the Strata recipe, one is Fontina cheese. Doesn't have to be this brand. Any Fontina cheese will do. It's very expensive, but it really tastes good. And it comes in a wedge shape. I've already opened it, obviously, and I grated it. And around the edges, they put this red wax to keep the cheese from drying out. So you have to peel that off because you don't want to eat red wax. So I've already done that. Now I'm going to do the white cheddar. You're not going to find this stuff already shredded, so you have to shred it yourself. Now the smallest I found is 8 ounces, and you don't need that much. But cheese freezes really well, so keep that in mind. So I'm going to open this and shred it. I'm going to go ahead and shred it all, so the next time I need it, it will be shredded. And even though the date says, like, this is April 2nd or 3rd, even though this date says October 8th, 2024, after you open the package, it's not going to last that long. So keep that in mind. That's why I freeze it. So we need to shred this. The big pieces are good enough. Your grater may not look like this. There's different kinds, but whatever you have, just use it. And just rub it across there, and it turns it into shredded cheese or grated cheese. So I'm just going to finish this. Okay, so I finished grating the white cheddar. This is about what I need. I am cutting, that's a piece of that red wax. If it's just a little bit, it won't hurt you. But anyway, white cheddar, grated it. This is the leftover. So I put it in one of my plastic bags and labeled it. I'm going to put it in the freezer so I can use it next time. This is the Fontina cheese that I already shredded. I'm going to put what I need in there for the recipe for today. And then I'm going to just make sure I have as much air out of there as possible. Close it up and put it in the freezer for next time. Okay, so you need some torn French bread pieces for this. And I only need, because it's just me and Greg, I'm cutting the recipe in half. So I only need maybe a cup and a half to 2 cups. But you put it on the a pan, and you're gonna heat these up. You're basically want it to be a little bit crispy, not crispy, but dried out is what you're doing. Try not to squish it. You still want it to be light and airy. So I'm trying not to just smush it down, but you know, just being gentle. That's probably 2 cups. So I'm gonna put this in the oven and dry it out according to the directions on the recipe. On 250, so I'm gonna put the bread in there and let it start drying out. Now I'm gonna cut up the zucchini and get it cooking. Use the peeling on this, so you need to be sure and rinse it off. Okay, so these are rinsed off already. Now I'm going to cut them. I don't want the end that piece. So that's gonna go away. Then I'm just gonna slice it pretty thin, not too thin. It cuts really easy. Just be sure not to cut your fingers. Okay. So I poured a tablespoon of this in there, and I used stick butter to pre-cut 1.5 tablespoons off of this, and that's what that is. And now the butter's gonna melt and the oils are gonna mix together, and then I'll put the zucchini in. Now the oil and the butter is mixed together and melted, so I'm gonna put the zucchini in it and just start cooking that while I cut up the squash. And then I'm going to turn it down because I still need to get the yellow squash in there. So let's turn you back around. We'll cut this up, cut off the ends, throw them out, and then cut them about the same size that you did the zucchini. They should be similar in thickness. Okay, put all of that in there. My pan may be a little small, but we'll make it work. Just kind of stir it up so that's just zucchini, don't worry. So they get oil and butter on them too. Mix it up. Then you just let it cook until both of them are soft. They'll get a little softer when they're cooking in the oven, but not too much. So you want to get most of the softness cooking done now. Remember to wash your cutting board right away because you do not want anything to grow in the wood. So you want to keep it clean. Always wash it right away. Don't ever let it sit for very long. Be sure to stir this around every once in a while to keep the ones on the bottom from getting burned. You just want them soft, which you can tell with a fork. If the fork goes in easily, then they're pretty soft, and if it's still crunchy, it'll be a little bit of like force against the fork. So, okay, stir this around, get the stuff on the bottom on the top. We're cooking it on low so they don't cook too fast. And let it cook 15 minutes or so. I don't know if you can tell on the camera, but like this one right here is really soft. You can tell a difference in the way it looks. This one is soft, this one is soft. The ones that are whiter are not soft yet. But the ones that are like more translucent, kind of just a yellowy color, like this one's soft. That zucchini, this squash. This one's still crunchy, but they're getting there. Just keep stirring and letting it cook. That looks like a lot of zucchini and squash, so I'm going to divide that in half, even though the recipe is already in half. So this is actually 1/4 of the recipe, but that's okay. It's just me and Greg, so I don't want to make too much. This one has a lid, so I will put this one in the freezer, and then this one we'll eat tonight. The next step is to grease these pans. It says to grease it with butter. You don't necessarily have to do that, but it does make a slight difference in the taste if you use butter or like a spray olive oil, something, but you can do either one. To grease it with butter, you open up your butter stick a little bit. Now, these pans are clean, so you know, it's not really gonna get the butter dirty or anything. But you be sure to do the sides and the corners like that. And then do the bottom. Okay, and this one is done. Ready for the next step. So before we move to the next step, I wanted to show you the difference between the garlics. We've got minced garlic in a jar. You've got garlic powder, and you've got garlic salt, and of course you have a real garlic piece, which I never use when I use this, because I don't like to peel it and mince it. And this works just as good, but it has to be refrigerated. Also, it has to be cooked. So if you're making a recipe that calls for garlic going into the pan, then you can use this. If you're not gonna cook it, it's just going into a bowl and you're gonna mix it up with stuff and not put it in a pan to cook. And I'm not talking about like a baking pan. I'm talking about like sautéing it with that. Okay, if you're not gonna put it in that pan over there, then you can't use that. You have to use one of these. This particular recipe calls for garlic salt, not garlic powder. So we're gonna use the garlic salt and put a teaspoon of this mixed in with the bread and the cheeses and the zucchini and squash. Okay, here is the grated white cheddar and Fontina cheese. I need to add the Parmesan cheese, and this you can already get shredded. You can also use the dried out Parmesan cheese, but I like this better. It's less processed. So mix that up, then we're gonna add that to our bowl, bigger bowl. Okay, I'm gonna add a teaspoon of the garlic salt. And my zucchini and squash is done, so I'm going to add that in there. I actually might need to let it cool off a minute because it's really hot. But see, they're nice and soft. They're kind of a translucent color, a golden color, and not white anymore. They look pretty. I'll let those cool off a bit so it doesn't melt my cheese right away. And then I'm gonna add the bread and mix it all together. Okay, here's the bread. It's, as you can see, crunchy. So this is dried out, it's perfect. It's cooled off a little bit, so I'm going to put it over here in, it's a little bit warm, and cheese, and the garlic mixture. Okay. And I'm going to toss the cheese around it a little bit. By the way, my hands are clean. I've washed them after every step because I try to wash the dishes and pans and utensils as I go along. So my hands are clean. All right, now I'm going to pour in this. And mix it up. We're going to do 5 eggs. One, two, three, four, and five. Okay, I'm going to whisk these. I don't know if you can tell. I lift up on this so it goes to one side and it's easier to keep them all together. And you just try to break the yolks and then do like this. You can also use your mixer because this actually came off of a mixer. You just put it in, but it's easier. It's less work for me to just do it myself. I don't want to have to take that other thing out, put it in, and then clean it off when I'm done. So I just do this. Or I can use a fork, which I'm also, you do the same way. Just tilt the bowl and kind of mix it up. All right, that's pretty good. Now, we're going to add 3/4 cup of milk. Here's the milk. And then you use your whisk to mix it up. And we're gonna add a teaspoon of salt. I mean, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Here's a 1/4 teaspoon. Here's my salt. There's the salt. Use a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. And then some fresh parsley. You can buy dried parsley in a seasoning container with the seasonings at the grocery store, but I happen to have some fresh parsley because I needed it for another recipe. So I'm just gonna pinch some off and then chop it up with my knife. It's said to put 1.5 tablespoons. That looks like about that much. And there's a half. Not a teaspoon, a tablespoon. Half a tablespoon. Put it all in there. And then whisk it up. Then I'm going to pour this into here. And then mix it up, make sure it gets all that bread. The bread needs to soak all that up. Okay, so now I have the 2 baking dishes I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put, I've already buttered it, remember? So I'm going to put this mixture in there. And then you cover it with saran wrap and you let it sit in the refrigerator so all that juiciness can soak into it. And the flavors can blend. All right, I'm gonna wrap this in plastic wrap and put it in the fridge. Okay, I've wrapped this one in plastic wrap and put the lid on this one. I'm just gonna go ahead and put this one in the freezer because it can be mixing together while it's in the freezer. And then this one I'll put in the fridge and I'll bake it tonight for dinner.